Par is brought to you by Par Breakers Golf Academy online instruction, video swing analysis, and e-learning courses, and powered by Swing Guru 3D swing analysis software. The right move. To find out more, go to www.parbreakers.com. Welcome to this week's episode of Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the only weekly golf instruction podcast that helps you take control of your game. Now here's your host, the founder of Par Breakers Golf Academy, Bernard Sheridan.
So Sam, welcome to Breaking Par. Thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure, Bernie. Always good to see you.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the products that you have, and to just, in the introduction, I kind of let them know that you're with Eyeline Golf and that you are producing some incredible products that PGA Tour professionals are using, LPGA professionals, teaching professionals, and all the different products that you have and how they're really helping so many golfers get better at the game. So give us a little bit of insight first on how did you get started, coming up with Eyeline Golf and starting the company.
Well, I didn't try to start a company. I tried to play better. I had hopes like a lot of people. I'd play on the senior tour. I was a competitive player a lot when I was younger. I had two sons that were in college, playing golf in college, and we were constantly working on our game. And actually, the first product I ever made was basically just to get after them a little bit. They would, they'd be hitting balls, Bernie, and juniors, they don't have any alignment aids. They're, the club face is aimed over there, and the feet are aimed over there, and the ball position is all over the place. And I'd get them all set up to practice, and they'd hit 5-6 balls, and they'd run out of grass. And instead of try to reset, they would, they just keep hitting them, and then pretty soon the sticks would be not perpendicular. And so the first thing I tried to create was something that would stay perpendicular and kind of figure out where their feet were aimed and where the ball position was, and you could move it around so they could get more grass. That's how complicated I got. I just wanted to make sure. If they were going to beat balls, they at least had some idea where it was supposed to go. And we call that the practice tee. And the first thing I created that one, and ended up licensing it to Momentous, which at the time was really a dominant training aid brand. Mm. And it was comical. I remember going to the first PGA show. Momentous had invited me down to basically talk about that product at the show. And I would have pros come by, teaching pros come by, and they say, oh, yeah, I've got something just like this. And I would say, no, you don't. Because if you could make it out of PVC pipe, I had already tried. If you could make it out of rubber bands and popsicle sticks, I'd already tried. I remember laughing about that because I had such conviction, because it couldn't be done. I mean, I'd ask everybody I could think of, could you do this out of PVC pipe or sliding this or sticks of that? And the answer was no. So I licensed it to Momentous, kind of figured out the process. We actually patented that one. And then the products began to roll after that, and we ended up being primarily for putting. But it was, it's a process to learn how the process of delivering a product to the market works. And that's where it started 14 years ago, I suppose.
Wow. So, it's really come a long way in 14 years. It's amazing how many products, too, that you have now. And then I know that I've been using the products for quite a while, and that's one of the big reasons why I asked you to be on the show, because I think that when it comes to instruction, there are certain products out there that are kind of hokey,
Yeah.
like they'll kind of, it's like, well, it kind of does the job, or it or like what you were saying, where other pros or people will go, oh, I can make that, and some of them, they can make them.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
But then some of the products, I want to say most of the products that you have, in your with Eyeline, you can't make them. You just can't go make them, and
Yeah.
they're really very unique, and they do a really great job in what they're intended to do, and that
Yeah.
is, help the player improve either in aim or on a swing plane or
Yeah.
on a path or
Yeah.
whatever that may be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do you do the majority of these? Do you come up with the majority of these ideas now on your own, or are they? Do you have a team that you work with now since you've gotten, more? I mean, basically, it started out as, like you said, I'm not trying to start a company here. I'm just trying to help my kids. Next thing you know,
And me, don't
yeah.
forget me. I was trying to help me.
Oh, well, that too, of course. So we're always trying to do that. Even
Yeah. Yeah.
even even professionals are trying to come up with things that maybe help them
Yeah.
fix a
Yeah.
problem
Yeah.
that they might have.
Yeah.
I mean, a good example of that is about 2 months ago, I had Ted Purdy on the show,
Oh, good.
and he produced the Purdy grip,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was basically because he
Yeah.
had a problem. He found that he had a slight problem with his grip.
Sure.
He didn't even
Yeah.
think he had a problem with his grip. Then he adjusted it. Then all of a sudden he started playing 10 times better.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
so essentially necessity is the mother of invention. And then sometimes what'll happen is, guess what? There's tons of other people who have the same problem and can really use that product and benefit from it. So I think the product that I see the most out there on tour being used is the mirror that you have that's on the ground. I see like
Yeah.
Rory using it and all
Yeah.
these guys using it all the
Yeah.
time.
To answer your original question, most of the ideas I are probably my idea. We certainly have guys around here that are terrific players on our staff, and they're but most ideas, Bernie, are not a single idea. They are the confluence of what about, and could we figure this out? So that's always now I've done products for Utley and Haney and Michael Breed, and I've done those type of products, but they are typically when I get that, it's because Hank would call and say, "Hey, I don't have anything to help people with their face alignment at impact." And I can remember that he actually walked up to me at Wingfoot.
Okay.
Never met Hank, and that was the U.S. Open that Tiger had just lost his dad. That's how I
Right.
remember it.
Sure.
So he came over and he said, "Hey, have you got some time tomorrow afternoon? Tiger will be finished about noon on Wednesday, and I'll have some time then." And he came over, and that was the discussion. Is I don't have anybody. I don't have any. We don't have anything to help people with that impact. So that was obviously in June because it was the U.S. Open,
Sure.
and we finally connected. I mean, on and off. Man, it was. I think I finally went to stay with him and work on that. It was near Thanksgiving. So it was a ways out there, but that typically is how that worked with those guys. Tremendous. I mean, I remember the first couple of days I spent with Stan Utley when he was really the center focus of putting instruction. In fact, he was probably the first one along that line. And you watch him, and you're trying to figure out the problem that they're trying to solve. That's my first question usually.
Sure.
And we try to create something that solves that problem, not everybody's problem on everything. That's the trap, I think, for training aids is that here's what I have, and it can also do, and it can also do, it can also do. And that's not the way the human mind works. We're not trying to look for a tool chest. We need a hammer, right? We don't need a hammer that can also act as a wrench and a vise and all that. So we are very design driven to say, what problem are we solving? Have we solved that one? And if it can do some other things, great. But that's not our intent. Our intent is really to design something that solves a single product.
Sure. So some of the products I was down to PGA show this year, and I got to chat with you just a little bit, and then I was also chatting with Brian Jacobs, who was down there,
Yeah.
and in your
Yeah.
booth there, and he was showing me some of the new products that you
Yeah.
came out. So tell some of the our listeners in Par Nation. What are the new things that you came out with this season, and how can they help them improve their game?
Well, you know what? That's a great question because if I'm not careful, my mind is out there a few months. We're working on new things that you'll see at the next PGA show.
Sure.
But we came out with something that called the Impact Cube. Ed Bow is the head of instruction at Amelia Island in Florida. Ed's a great PGA pro, and we talked about this for a long time. But a lot of people have used an impact bag. It's a round bag full of stuff,
Right.
and you're trying to figure out how to get your hands in the shaft lean and so forth. So one of Ed's ideas, I mean, we certainly everything gets refined along the way, was to create a bag that was, first of all, was durable. We made it out of ballistic nylon, so you can't cut it open. That's a big deal because those
Mm.
bags really can be shredded. But also, instead of it being a round bag, it has angles to it, so that I have the shaft lean of a wedge, I have the shaft lean of a 7-iron, I have the shaft lean of a driver. Well, that's fantastic. I mean, those innovations are significant. So that's new. It has some other things. You can see it on the website, obviously. We came out with, let's see what all came out at the show this year. We came out with a laser
Mm.
that can be seen outdoors. That's a huge deal. And that was the request of the tour. They are big laser guys. You don't get to argue with a laser. Where's my alignment? Is the putter moving on the right path? But they would like the idea of using it outdoors. So we've had a laser in the past, and I had a new lens made. I had a stronger case made. I had a more powerful laser made. We fight some battles in the U.S. is that you can only have a laser that's 5 milliwatts. Anything past that, you have to have a license. So that's not going to work typically. Nobody's
No,
going to get
no,
a
of course
license
not.
to
Sure.
use a putting aid.
Right,
So,
exactly.
so instead of having a line, Bernie, which is a laser is a dot, it's always a dot. So when I diffuse it and make it into a line, I now have 100 dots that are sort of connected, but they are 100th the strength of a single dot. So what I did was had a lens made that we have 20, I think there's 30 dots. So now it's 3.5 times stronger than a single dot would have been. So that's pretty good. And now I can see it outdoors. So I don't need a license, and I have a laser that I can see outdoors. So when we combine that with something that we call the putting sword, which is sort of a plastic, it's not really plastic, but it's a type of surface that I can lay down for alignment, that laser reflects off that outdoors perfectly. Otherwise, the grass just kind of sucks up the light.
Sure.
Well, that was a giant delivery at the show, obviously hugely successful. And on the tour, it's been unstoppable. It's just every single week a new pro picks it up. So that was a one we did. And then we did one with Stephen Amick, who teaches at Glen Eagles in Dallas, called the Bunker Pro. And I remember it distinctly because I just came from a conference in Florida where we had a bunch of media people, and wandering in a bunker, that's always a dangerous sight. And the idea with the Bunker Pro, and you can see it on the website as well, it's this piece of polycarbonate. And the idea is you swing, you miss the board, hit the sand. So I can place a ball in a position where I have to take a divot, if you will, of a bunker, and the ball just pops out. So it's been a lot of fun. We shot some video of these people, and not every magazine editor is a great bunker player, I found. But they were they were getting the ball out of the sand. They would look at you with this look of disbelief, like I don't get it out of the bunker. But now, so those were a few of the things that we brought out at the show, as well as a few things that we've redesigned from the past. So it was a busy season at the show, and we've got new things since then.
And that's great. I mean, and I mean, there's so many, especially a laser that because when you think about it, I guess during a practice round or before an event, those guys are out there,
Oh yeah,
and they're on the putting green and they're working on stuff. So if they have something that they can align with and
yep,
then see it while they're
yep,
outside,
yeah, yeah.
it works great. And
And you mentioned, Bernie, that, Rory and Ricky, and with that small mirror, that is such an example of the precision that a tour player needs, more so for an amateur. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The tour players use it religiously, and the amateur who really needs it uses it occasionally. And it's so comical. Ricky's been using the mirror since he was at Oklahoma State, I think. And Butch is a good friend of ours, and Ricky spends a lot of time. I shouldn't say that. He frequents Scotty Cameron's studio in San Diego.
Sure.
So I got a call from Paul at Scotty Cameron. It would have been the week of match play at Harding Park. So I think that was just the week before the Players. And he says, I got to tell you a story. He says, Ricky came in here. He has a tendency to get his eyes crooked. And he said he walks in the studio and his alignment's all jacked up again. And he says he's been great for a couple of years. And Paul said, he told me, he says, where's your mirror? And he goes, well, it's in the car. He goes, go get it. And sure enough, he brings it in, tosses it down. His head is cockeyed, kind of gets his left eye higher than his right. Mm-hmm. And he says, we got his alignment figured out. And he putted much better that week at Harding Park. And obviously he wins the Players. Well, Butch, in the interview after he won the Players, Butch says, Ricky's not been putting well. We got him back on his mirror, and he's back on his putting game. And so that little mirror has a tremendous following of, I think last year we had over 100 tour players put a new mirror in their bag. Now, some of them had a mirror prior, but that's a lot of tour players. Oh, my word. Now, we have a few different mirrors depending upon what they're looking for. If they're trying to check their shoulder alignment, it's a different mirror.
Yeah.
But it's still a mirror. And so we kind of lump those together. But that little mirror has made a tremendous amount. I mean, we had 17 of the 24 Ryder Cup players were using an Eyeline product. A lot of them were that small mirror. So it's been a fun year that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're just like I said at the beginning here, and that's a big reason why I have you here because mainly we talk about golf instruction. That's what this show is about.
Okay.
And of course we're trying to help grow the game. So essentially, if we can give our listeners an understanding of something that's going to absolutely make a huge difference and improve your game, and it's maybe not a tip, it's actually a product that you can just Good go point. To a website and purchase and own.
Yeah.
And understand how to use it, and then execute that, and then use it in conjunction maybe with an instructor that you're working
Absolutely.
with. Then now you can get the insight from him, and then you could also have the feedback from the product.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like a win-win. And essentially too, I believe that if a product is being endorsed by top players in the world,
right,
and you're not paying them to endorse it,
not a one.
Then there you go. Then that says it all right there. That you have superior product. That they might not be walking out in front of a camera and saying, well, I use this Eyeline Golf or whatever, but when their video, when media is covering them, Golf Channel, CBS, whoever's covering them, and they're shooting video of them on the putting green and your product, and they're using your product, there's the endorsement right there.
Well,
it says
remember
it all.
back at the Tour Championship last fall, they were watching Rory warm up. Now, he was playing late, and the Golf Channel coverage always comes on pretty early. So he's over there, obviously by himself, kind of, and he's got his mirror down there, and he's hitting these 10-footers.
Yep.
And they start counting them.
Yep.
He makes 54 in a row, and they're counting them.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's a lot of putts. That took a while. That wasn't a 20-minute deal. That, he was just killing time, but he makes 54 in a row. Well, what was fascinating about that, Bernie, is now I start getting emails from people going, hey, I'm taking the Rory Challenge. I'm going to make more than 54 in a row. I'm like, yeah, please be my guest. Enjoy yourself. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, no kidding. Right.
And I think right now the record from all the people that email me, I think is 18. From 10 feet, you set up, you make 18 in a row. That's still incredible. Because the tour average from 10 feet is less than 50%. So to make 54 in a row, crazy, but it's been a lot of fun that way.
Yeah, it's nuts. So tell us a little bit about Four Elements, and that's a
Okay.
program that you've put together. That's actually a learning program, and there's instructors who get certified in that.
Yep.
I'm of course one of them. And then there's these programs that they can conduct to help
Right.
people. And so tell us a little bit about that, and so that at least our listeners out there can try to find an instructor locally who's involved in that, and then go take that little course.
So here, this is a great question. I haven't answered this in a while. The four putting elements is a direct result from me being on the tour for a decade. And I'm not an instructor out there per se. I'll look at students and or players and stuff, but I am an incredible sponge when it comes to hanging around putting instructors. I want to hear everything. I want to see everything. And over the course of that time, I noticed that these instructors, they were following a sequence. Every single one of them. It doesn't matter if it's Stockton or Utley or Hain, doesn't matter. They are checking the same stuff. They may call it different, but they watch a player and he steps up there, and the first thing they're looking for, Bernie, they're checking his alignment, they're checking ball position. They're just eyeballing this because that's where you start. I call that setup. Doesn't if you're square to square on the arc, doesn't matter. Alignment is alignment. And then they'll have the guy kind of hit some putts, and they'll be paying attention to where's the putter moving. And if it's moving a little bit outside, we call that path. They'll stick a tee down and make sure that the putter's coming inside the path, or vice versa. If somebody comes inside, and I call that path. And then because if I've got the path right and now I'm missing, I know it's the face. I know it. I don't have any other choices. I'm not pulling it. I'm not pushing it. It's the face. And I call that impact. What is the face? What's the alignment at impact? Every single, they're checking that. They're going down the checklist. And then they always finish with, so how's the speed working? How long's the stroke? The guy's bringing it back too long. They may stick a tee behind so that they'll make the stroke a little shorter. So I call that the four putting elements: setup, path, impact, and speed. I don't care about your style. It doesn't make any difference what country you're in. Green's fast or slow. It doesn't matter. Every putting instructor will work on those things. Now, if I'm not getting the putter back to impact squarely, I got to teach. I got to figure out what the deal is. Is it your right elbow? Is your flow lines right? That's fine. But the four putting elements is basically a framework so that we can talk with a student or ourselves, whatever, and figure out, let me kind of check your setup. Let me make sure that the alignment's good and the ball position is good and your eyes where you want them to be and so forth. Let me check the path of the putter. And they go through this sequence. What typical amateurs do is they want you to fix, hey, I'm missing everything to the right. Tell me why. Well, the tendency is to try to figure that out if I just step back and go, let me kind of watch you hit some putts. Let me check your alignment. Let's see if the path is right. And all of a sudden you realize, hey, you're missing it to the right because the path is way outside, then you're dropping it to the inside and it's a big push. And I get there, I get the answer. So the four elements is basically that. And so I would do clinics about that. I'm a big believer that understanding something is not the same as building a skill. I can understand putting and never make a putt, but I've got to have reps. I've got to have feedback to what you just said. So the idea with the four putting elements is it evolved into a clinic or a set of drills that are 100% reps. Just do the drill properly. You're going to get your setup and path and impact and speed correct. So that's what the four putting elements are. And then we've evolved that, Bernie, to now it's an app that we call Putting Boot Camp. So it's a free download, free apps. It's 15 ways to check your setup. It's 10 ways to check your path and impact and speed. They're all there. You can download the app for free, Putting Boot Camp, the iTunes store. I can post the scores of my drill, check my progress, and now in the next week or so, we'll announce a teacher version that will allow your students to send you, or you be able to look at your students' results and know, hey, this drill is giving you fits. Let's take a look at this and so forth. So that's what the 4 elements are, and technology has made it really easy with the boot camp app.
It's great. I mean, it's all great stuff, and the most wonderful thing about all these products that I feel is that they help people better understand what the problem is, and then address that problem and then fix it, which turns them into better players. So then now what that does is it gets them excited about golf.
Yeah,
They want to play more because they're playing better. They understand it better. And then they're telling their friends, "Oh my gosh, you
yeah,
got to do this because
yeah,
you're going to have a lot of fun."
yeah.
And it's so and then that's just exponentially it's growing the game. And
Well,
that's really
and
an excellent thing.
you know what's great about it? With putting, I don't have to be young, old, big, small, strong, weak, male, female. I can do it, and I can do it with a friend. I can do. We had clinics where we have grandfather, granddaughters. We've had neighbors. We've had 2 guys in the same foursome. We've had husband and wife. The husband is the state senior champ, and the wife has never played golf. They can be in the same group because we're hitting 6-footers, right? So it's been a lot of fun. It's helped a lot of people, helped a lot of teachers get their message out there. So I appreciate you saying that. That's great.
Well, it's all true. I mean, I only my initials aren't BS for nothing. So because I don't BS a whole lot. I can if I really want to, but I would much rather just call it like I see it,
That's
and that's the
great.
way I see it. It's I mean, it's a fine product. All the products that you use,
Good.
that you produce are very fine products, and nobody's paying me to endorse them. I mean, and I've been using them for quite a while. As a matter of
Yeah,
fact,
yeah,
if
yeah.
I sneak down here and hold a product up that I use on
There
a
you go.
regular basis,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
sitting right here by my desk, and that one
yeah.
right there is in my golf bag,
There
so
you
that
go.
when I'm working with students
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that, I mean, that's just one of many products
yeah.
that you produce that I have and use on a regular basis.
And that one, when you bring that up, Bernie, it's funny because in Colorado we're indoors half the year basically, right? And I'm in my basement, which is my wife affectionately calls the lab, and I've got I would never call it a putting green. It's more like a platform. It's 2 feet wide. It with my sons, if you think about it, it's 2 feet wide. It's plywood on top of a couple of 2x4s, and it's about 4 inches high, right? Which is deep enough to set a cup in, and
Yep.
we got carpet on there. So I've got all sorts of junk laying around, as you can imagine, right? And one of these pieces of leftover acrylic from years and years and years ago is I'm hitting these putts. I'm watching my stroke, and I'm decelerating. I'm watching it, and it's decelerating, and I'm like, "What in the world? What are we doing?" So at the time, I'm reading a story about this Brazilian soccer team that for these juniors, for these kids, and they don't have enough space to put them on a soccer field, so they're kind of in this dirt barn sort of a deal. And they have a soccer ball, if you will, that's much smaller than a soccer ball and much heavier. And they have to be more precise with their kicking, and they kick it more often because it's a smaller field and all that. And I'm thinking, you know what? Why don't I make a ball that's a lot heavier and do the same thing? That's where the ball of steel came from. I found a ball bearing that's 5 times the weight of a ball. We put it eventually. I mean,
Hmm.
nothing happens
Sure.
quickly.
Sure. Of course.
I mean, I used to tape it up. I put foam on the putter. I did everything I could. It took a while. And that's where the ball of steel came from, where I have to hit it with an affirmative stroke. I don't hit it as far. Think about the dirt barn that these kids were playing in, because
Sure.
I can only roll it 3 or 4 feet.
Yep.
And that's where the ball of steel came from. So they're not all genius ideas. I happen to be reading a book at the right time and have a decelerating stroke at the right time.
Well, you know what? That's necessity is the mother of invention, and
Absolutely.
and a lot of times things happen. They just I always feel that the best ideas happen by just popping into your head when you see something else,
Yeah.
and then quick write it down. Or
Yeah.
I mean, the great thing about these the technology we have today with our phones is you can just right
Yeah.
away
Yeah.
record right in
Yeah.
there. Oh my
Yep.
gosh, I have this idea. So think
Yes.
about this, and then you
Yes.
say it, And I know that I do that all the time. I'll just
Yeah.
record it into my phone as a memo, and then I'll go back into it later, and I'll listen to it because things just come in and out of your head. If you're the type of person like I am, you have a million other things on your mind too. So, and that's just the way things are today. And you forget if you pop up with an idea. So if you can quick somehow grasp it, and
Yeah.
then now later on, go back to it, and then start to really think about, okay, how can I, and like you said, it's a long process. You come up with an
Yeah.
idea,
Yeah.
now you got to start to figure it out. Then you got
Yeah.
to look at this, and you got to look at that, and then you got to
Yeah.
find something else that's going to work, and then finally
Yeah.
you get to the point where you can produce it. That ball of steel is awesome.
Yeah. It's
Um,
fun.
I mean, it really, with, like you said, with decelerating. I have so many students who decelerate, and this
Yeah.
really gets them accelerating through, and
Yeah.
then they just stay online a lot better. Because if you're getting that end over end roll,
Yeah.
then you're staying online much better.
So the other part of this, I'm thinking, because I'll be at Chambers Bay next week, right? And I go to the U.S. Open. It's very different because you don't take your products out there. It's not that kind of a deal.
Sure.
But I'm fortunate enough to be able to be out there on the putting green and so forth. And when you talk about doing the memos, so I will see, Bernie, I don't know, 150 players. There's 140 of them that have a coach with them. I mean, and
Yeah.
they're from all over the world, every language. Nobody, by and large, no one's there by themselves. I mean, they're going to have college players. You'll have mini tour players and web.com guys, and you'll have some senior tour or champions tour players, a couple here and there, and a lot
Yep.
of a lot of PGA Tour players that are, but they also have kind of lunchroom if that's the right thing to do. Well, conversations sitting around a table with Butch Harmon or with Sean Foley or you name it. There are tremendous insights that you get when you're not trying to fix a putting stroke. When you just say, so what do you think is the fastest way to communicate a new movement to someone? Well, that's a question that gets an encyclopedia worth of genius, right? I can remember last year at Pinehurst. Remember how baked out that was, and it was like a prairie out there.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there having lunch, and I'm trying to. Oh gosh, his name escapes me. What's the wedge guy from Titleist?
Bob Vokey.
Bob Vokey. So he's sitting there having lunch, and I'm having lunch, and I'm listening to a TV interview, a newspaper interview with Bob Vokey about wedges and the adjustments that they have to make at Pinehurst. I'm I mean, I'm not eating, I can't even breathe. I'm listening. This is gold beyond gold, and then you have gold plating on these suggestions, right? That's the kind of stuff that you only get if you're there. And if you get lucky enough to have a badge that gets you in there, you get to listen to. He's the number one wedge maker upper person on the
Yeah, no,
planet.
you're true. That's very true.
You know,
I have Vokey
yeah.
wedges in my bag. And I just love the way that there's just something about them that's just totally unique and unbeatable when it comes to a wedge.
And you get to listen to him talk about grind and bounce and that's where the ideas come from. I mean, I'll get them next week. I'll come back with ideas that'll last 2 or 3 years because it's this guy and he's working on that. And I get a chance to talk to his coach and say, what are we working on? He goes, well, we've consistently mishit the ball a little further off the toe. So what are you working on? Well, we have this drill and then I made this thingamajig and we put a Band-Aid on that and when I come back, I've got something that you and I can use much more consistently than what we have. But there's a lot of homemade stuff at the U.S. Open, and it's
Oh yeah.
if I can find a way to make it more consistent, where we can use it ourselves and deliver it to students, then it's going to be a lot of fun. That's why we always start with new products on the tour rather than to the average guy, because if the tour player uses them and likes them, then you got something.
Well, I always find that the best instructors are always tinkering with stuff.
Absolutely.
And fooling around and adding lead tape here or doing that or putting a Band-Aid on or whatever
Yeah.
it may be.
Yeah.
And that's because uh, as problems arise, they are trying to address those problems and come up with a solution. And then things, like you said, things pop into their head, and then they just do whatever they can use, that's available, and then produce that. Now someone like you sees that, and now you say, okay, you can take it a step further, and then start to really refine
Yeah.
whatever it is that you're using, and then make it into a viable now product, and then end up probably selling it back to the same guy
Maybe.
who's going to use it and say, "Hey, yeah, that's great." I mean, and totally different than what I was using that day, but it does so much more now. It's just
Yeah.
fantastic.
I had one of my favorite stories about the U.S. Open. My mind was racing as you were telling that. So we did a product for Michael Breed a few years ago called the putting sword. And it was the result of a lot of tour players trying to roll a ball down a yardstick. Makes sense.
Sure.
The problem was the speed of a yardstick is about 40 on the stimp meter. So
Right.
it's too fast, and if they get bent, they're no good, and so forth. So I went to Olympic with a new version of that, if you can imagine. It was made out of really thin, kind of high quality plastic, but we put a fabric surface on this piece to slow it down, to make it more, more like a putting green instead of like a rooter.
Right.
And we had printed on top of there whatever it was. It was called the practice, the putting sword, and so forth, and whatever. So I'm there on the putting green. I can't remember who we're with, but the first guy that tried it was Vijay Singh. I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard to do this anyway. You have got a quarter of an inch margin of error on either side of this. But Vijay's not the most patient guy on the tour. Let's just put it that way. But he loves this stuff. So he throws it down. He's trying to hit putts on this, and he cannot keep the ball on the surface. He can't do it. It can't be done. Bernie, I mean, he's 0 for 25. I am freaking out. I'm like, oh my God. Of all the players in the world, you don't want to fail a lot in a row. He would be the one. And I am a nervous wreck, but it is not working. So anyway, we get through that whole debacle. We tried it with a few more players, and no one can keep it on here. And it just doesn't make any sense because they could keep it on the ruler, but they couldn't keep it on the sword. So I come back home and I'm putting and I'm putting and I can't keep it on there anymore either. And I thought, this doesn't make any sense. And come to find out, the fabric, which had a little bit of nap that we put on the top of this putting sword, was fine. When we screen printed it on there, the ink of the screen print actually caused that fabric to stand up. So now we're trying to put the ball down this ridge, if you will, of the ink on the screen printing, and it was repelling the ball off the sides.
Oh my gosh.
The only person who could get it down the sword is if you're hitting a 40-footer. You're just hitting it so hard.
You're hammering
that
it.
The ink didn't have a chance to knock it off. I will never forget that. It was hilarious. All we had to do is move the printing to the edges of the sword,
And totally
and then the
changed
ball
it.
could roll down. But we didn't know it. And the first place I took it, as smart as I am, was to the U.S. Open. Really?
Yeah.
A lot of people would take it to the guy down the street and let him try it first. Oh, that was a blast.
Oh,
And that
funny.
still has become we've changed the product since then, but I'll never forget that. That was embarrassing was not the word. Terrifying was the word.
That's funny. That is so funny. So as we're winding up here, there's two questions that I want to ask you. One, before we wrap this up.
This is my real hair. That always comes up. So what's the second question?
So it's if you were going to recommend a product for any of our listeners out there who don't have any of your products yet,
Okay.
and they're going to go to the site and they're going to look at that stuff. Which product would you recommend for them to purchase first? That would give them, the what you feel would be the most results in the shortest period of time.
Man,
And I
it's
know
a
that's
tough
a,
one.
that's a hard question.
It's tough, but because it's a tie. There's two of them,
Okay.
and they address the same thing. So one is the putting rail. We call it the edge putting rail, and the reason it's such a great aid to start with is that it focuses on my alignment. I let the putter ride on this rail. And if I do that properly, usually from short range, I'll make a lot of putts because I can't push it or pull it, right? If I miss, I know it's the face at impact. So it gives me a lot of feedback. I can make easy adjustments and I make a lot of putts and I start to build a little bit of confidence. So that's giant. I mean, Bernie, so if putting is confidence, that's the number one confidence builder.
Okay.
The second one that's a tie is any of the putting mirrors because it helps me with alignment, helps with my setup, getting the face square at impact. I can set up a putter gate. So those two things are a tie. They're a tie on the tour. No, that's not true. There's more guys on the tour now using the mirror. It used to be that way, but now it's more guys are using mirrors. But for the average guy, I don't know, man. It's either the mirror or it's the rail, and I wouldn't care which one you got because eventually you're going to get the other one. Boy, that rail makes you make an awful lot of putts in a hurry. But the mirror really kind of gets you set up. You can use both of them indoors if you need to. So I think I'm going to just say it's a tie.
Okay, and that's a good answer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the reason why I said if you could pick one, is because I already know that if they buy one, they're all so darn good that they're going to be
Yeah.
sold and they're going to buy more. Like you said, well, they're going to buy more, and they're going to
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
every one of every single product that you have, it really is. I want to say probably the best for what it represents in the market, and as
That's
opposed
great.
to
Thank you.
other manufacturers who might be trying to maybe produce something that's similar or copy what you do or
Yeah.
whatever that is. But
Well, we get the feedback from the tour. I don't think I've ever produced a product that was in its final form, ever. And I take stuff out there, and inevitably, my mind went back to Pinehurst. I had a new prototype there last year of something called the slot trainer. And as I started working with these teachers, they would go, you know what would be great? If we put a hole here, it would give us this. If we made this longer, that would be better. If this were thinner, or this were thicker, or this were wider. And by the time I got to Valhalla, which was roughly a month later, that's not true, probably 6 weeks later,
okay,
that product was a lot better than it was the first time I took it out. So it's feedback that makes it what you're talking about. I mean, I appreciate you saying they're better, but it's the tour players' feedback and their coaches that make them that. There's nobody else on the tour with training aids. I mean, we're the only people out there with training aids. So we soak that up as the best that we can and make it as good as we can be.
yeah. Well, that's kind of like your R&D department. I mean,
Yeah,
you walk out there and you just give it to these guys and you say, okay, use this and tell me what you think's wrong with it or what or what you like about it. And usually you don't even have to say that to them because most instructors are pretty opinionated and they're going to tell you exactly what they think they would change.
Absolutely.
And
You don't have to ask.
yeah, you don't even
there's
have
no
to
asking
ask.
needed.
You go, hey, you know what? This is great, but if you did this,
Oh yeah.
then
Yeah.
it would be even better. And
Yeah.
so that's awesome. So
That's
so
great.
for our listeners out there in Par Nation, where do they need to go to find your products?
We are pretty insistent. We work through teachers, through pro shops, etc. We're not represented typically at big box like that. We've been there, but the problem is there's no one there to help you kind of get your feet on the ground with that. So our website is Eyeline Golf, and it's EYE instead of there's a lot of iPhone, whatever. So this
Sure.
is EYE, like your eyeball, Eyeline Golf. Our philosophy, and you know that, Bernie, is that nobody wants to buy a training aid. They just want to putt better. So our website is all about helping you putt better, drills, games, things that you should learn. And oh, by the way, you may need a mirror to help you with this, or you may need a rod, or you may need a this or that. So when you go to the website, it's 90% helping you and 10% and here's something to help you. So those are the two places, your local pro or the website, and same day shipping and all that. But it's a great way to get better. And we've got new things coming all the time, so pay attention.
Great. Well, Sam, it was an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for being here. And there's a lot of information that was gathered today that we talked about.
Good.
And I'm sure that our listeners will be able to use that and then take advantage. Go to that website and pick up a mirror or a rail or whatever it is that they think would be good, and then get started and onto a way to a better game. So as we always say here in parting, even though we're putting all the time and you are in the short grass, try to keep it in the short grass.
Try to keep it below the short grass.
Yeah,
How about
there
that?
you go. All right, great.
Thanks, Bernie.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Take care.
Pleasure, buddy. All the best.
All right.
Now you can take control of your game right now from your smartphone, tablet, or desktop. Just go to www.parbreakers.com/e-learning. That's www.parbreakers.com/e-learning. Your game will thank you for it.